As I mentioned a little while ago, for those just popping in, my name is Cherie Roy, and I'm your facilitator for this session. So I'd like to begin by respectfully acknowledging the traditional custodians of the land on which we live, work and learn. I pay my respects to the First Nations people and their elders past, present and future. All right, first up we have Michelle. So how this is going to work, for those who weren't part of our previous conversation, I'll put the questions after each, allow questions after each presentation, but we will have to keep it tight into time. So each presentation's got about 20 minutes, including comments. So we will keep to time, and I'll put the timer on. So Michelle Roberts is going to lead us off this afternoon with the presentation entitled Same, but Different. So our overall theme for this room is professional development of educators. Take it away, Michelle.
Sorry, I put my timer on, not my mute. So this presentation is same, but different. I'll just share my screen so we've got that started. You can all see that, can't you? So the presentation is about exploring equivalence in online and on-campus delivery. And I think when we talk about equivalence, the term is often used, but it's not really well defined in the literature. And it's become a bit of a term to replace equality and equity. And I'm sure we've all seen this kind of equality, equity comparison on, equality, or you give a bit more to create equity. But I would add a third section to this called equivalence, which is just that little bit different. So equivalence, creating an equivalent experience is not about creating the same experience for everyone or giving everyone that same opportunity. It can actually be about creating learning experiences that provide a whole different way of teaching and a whole different educational experience. And I think this is an example with the equality and the equity. Dad and the kids are at the game, whereas we could be watching it on TV at home via internet. And each of those methods of being involved in that create different opportunities for us. So we want people to have the same learning outcomes. We want them to have the same success, but we're going to do it differently, and we need to do it differently quite often. So that's what this presentation's all about. So I thought I would give you a little bit of stats first. So, why do people choose to study online? And that understanding that can actually help understanding where the equivalence and lack of equivalence may apply. And most of this is I will preface that if I'm giving you data, it tends to be around undergraduate domestic public universities, because that was easier to compare to some of the studies that were based in America. But what I've tried to do here is keep the stuff that's all about Australia. So it does compare quite well though. So choosing to study online, it's had massive growth. It's had like 45% growth. And if you include what we call multimodal, so people that are studying a little bit face-to-face and they might do an online course as well, it's had like 93% growth. But regardless of all that, still 67 before COVID, everything's before COVID, 67 still study face-to-face or choose to study face-to-face. I will preface that where I am teaching digital media in CQUniversity, CQUniversity has a very different set of statistics. 90% of our study is online or multimodal. So we only have 10% of students at CQUniversity choosing to study their whole degree face-to-face. A little bit about the demographics of an online learner is they tend to be a little bit older. Just that they tend to be slightly more mature in that 25-year plus age group, whereas the face-to-face learner tends to be in that school leaver up to 24 years old. The online blended learning tends to be taken up by a lot more female students, and that makes a bit of sense when you start to think about why they're doing this. 68% in Australia of online learners are female compared to 54% of face-to-face. And if we look at what motivates students to study online, I mean, one of the really obvious things is flexibility. Now, flexibility is the one area in all the studies that I've read where online is considered to be a higher benefit, in that area. If we think of equivalence, it's not about making it all like face-to-face or all like online. It's actually where are the strengths out of one area that we could create equivalence in another area. And flexibility is that big space in online learning. So students who choose to study online, they do it because of flexibility, but they also, sometimes it's about cost efficiency. And if you think about Australia, cost efficiency isn't just that the cost of the course, because it may be very similar in fees and that sort of thing. It may be that you have to move towns away from family, that you have accommodation, all those sort of additional costs to that. Convenience could be the reason, another reason why you choose it. And there may be, quite often there is other restrictions or constraints. So they have to work, or they have a family, or something that stops and prevents them from actually attending that face-to-face model of delivery. And another good one is that quite often online students like to study at a self-paced and self-directed. They like that self-paced, self-directed learning. And it's really interesting because when you look at that, is quite often the flip side is that students wanting to study face-to-face, they want those constraints. They want a time to turn up. They want that deadline every week of being there and attending in that face-to-face mode. So they can work like that. And then one of the really big reasons, and one that we see a lot at CQUniversity, is geographical. There isn't somewhere to study where they live. So they choose online because they can bring that into their home. So when we're looking at creating equivalence, one of the things we need to look at, when I've looked at all the studies, you can't judge, you can't say equivalence is this and we do this test and it's equivalent. You need to pick something to check it against. And most of the studies centre around three major things where there's a lack of equivalence or a difference in equivalence. And that tends to be, they check to see whether people are achieving results. Are they achieving the same results? And that's varied so much in studies that you couldn't say wholeheartedly, yes, it's the same results. We get the same, whether you study online or whether you study face-to-face, you achieve the same academic results. But overall, that's generally true. Obviously, it changes between, in different areas. The other one is engagement. So, that there's a perception that there's a lack of engagement when you study online. That isn't actually a fact, that's a perception. So quite often there's actually just a touch more engagement with online students. It's not, so depending on obviously the lecture and all of that sort of thing, engagement can be a very similar sort of thing. But one major area where there is a significant lack of equivalence is in attrition rates or continuation of study. Students who are studying online have significantly higher attrition rates. And looking at the stats for Australia, there was 2019, it'll be interesting to see what happens with the COVID group, but there was the attrition between online study and face-to-face was just over 17% higher in online. So that's quite significant. When you look at all of that, some of the things that you need to think about is that improving student engagement has been found to be really important to the success of online students. So we need to be engaging with them. The perceptions can be quite detrimental to the actual experience. So students may expect that they're not going to get good interaction. They don't think they're going to have as much access to the instructor, the educator, or their peers. So even though that may not be true, that may be a perception that they have about their lack of equivalence. One of the really interesting things was when you combine when you combine, I got distracted by chat, everybody, so just in case you're wondering, face-to-face and online elements. So when you develop stuff for online students that face-to-face students can also access in the online environment, that is significantly more successful than teaching purely online or purely face-to-face. So where you're able to combine those two, there's going to be a lot greater success for students overall in all those areas. Collaborative learning, so learning with their peers or instructor-led learning, shows improved success for students, especially online students. It can be quite interesting how you do that. So quite often the perception of online is that it's like the old correspondence school where you send out the information, they sit and do it on their own, they do all their assessment, and then they post it back to you. But that's not what works as well, and it's not what we have anymore, because we've got such great technology that really helps with that engagement and collaboration and that sort of thing. So that leads to instructor presence. If the more present the instructor is especially in online, because when you're face-to-face, you walk into the classroom, you're present. You're seeing students, that's sort of, you have a sort of automatic presence. But online, you've got to create that presence a little bit more. So that's one of the areas that has been found. The more actively involved that you are with your students, the better their success is. And thanks, Stephen says, there's no silver bullet. We look for a bronze bullet. When I say these all help, there's no silver bullet. There's not one thing that you can do that will actually fix it. It tends to be a range of smaller things that you can do. And quite often there's factors way beyond any of our control that affect success. And these could be things such as gender, age, ethnicity, education level. So if they're coming into your degree, have they got enough education behind them to do the work that you're setting them? Their pedagogical preferences. If I was studying online, but my preference would be face-to-face, and I want that synchronous learning, and I want that interaction, and I want that, am I going to struggle more with a purely online version? Also technical issues, technical skills. So and I'm sure everyone is extraordinarily familiar with that after having to switch to online. Most people switching to online. Do they have internet access? Do they want you to see their bedrooms because then you can't see their face? Can they operate the computer? Can they use, all of that sort of thing can also influence them. And when you think about degrees like what I'm teaching into digital media, then that technical skills and technical issues has a significant impact, not just on their ability to interact, but their ability to actually access the programs and have the equipment that they need to do the work. So it can be really hard. And also one of the biggest things that can affect their successes is their subject matter. So they could be really successful in one area, could show really successful online delivery, and another subject matter may struggle, and it may just be the actual nature of the subject matter. So a couple of things we can do, and I've pulled these out of a Australian government document, but I thought they were good, was things like designing for online. So don't design, the big take home is don't try and teach online like you're teaching face-to-face. It's very different, and you need to come up with different things to create an equivalent experience. So things like purpose-made short videos. So I'll talk about the unit I coordinate and write, which is print design. It's a very tech-heavy, uses Adobe InDesign. I do a whole series of purpose-made short videos that they can watch, 10 minutes or so, to see how to do something. Now, this might be something that I would present in class. It may be something I demonstrate to students while they're in class, but I also create those so that students can watch, rewind, and get those concepts. I mean, obviously that can be done for any topic. Think about tasks that encourage communication and collaboration, thinking student to student as well. So in the week 1 of my print design unit, I have an activity where they have to design, because it's a design sort of unit, and they have to design something that shows their first name and their last name, and they have to express their personality versus their family personality by the typefaces they choose. And then other students have to come and they have to comment and guess, oh, you're a lot like your family, or you're very different to your family, you look really zany. And that in week 1 breaks the ice for everyone, and everyone's talking to everyone. I have online and face-to-face all posting that up onto a discussion forum, and so it builds that communication straight away. Use of online tools to provide synchronous and asynchronous activities. So think about, we do video discussion boards, we do portfolios. I mean, there's a whole range of things that you can use. Present information in multiple ways. So things like, I have like, I don't know if you can see it, this little study kit I post out to students, which has a whole heap of physical things that the online students get to touch and feel, because I know I can't have them in my class showing them physical things. Think about, do you have online textbooks, videos, Zoom, demonstrations, all sorts of things. And one of the things students really value is the ability to move at their own pace. So that flexibility in online, how can you bring that into a face-to-face classroom? How do you allow them to have some of that self-paced learning? Things like developing your teacher presence is really, really important. So welcome, use personal introductions. First 5 minutes of any Zoom session that I'm doing with online students, which has been a lot lately, is, hi, how are you? Say, pick up their names. I write down their names as they join the room, make sure I say hello to them all. It might not work if you've got 300, but pick a few so that they know you're actually paying attention. Or when I ask questions, I make sure I ask different students to respond in that sort of space. Be responsive, give timely, detailed feedback, and generate peer interaction, I think, which is what I was talking about before. Find ways to get them to work together. And sometimes if you can, get the online students to work with the face-to-face students, or get them working asynchronously on things and make sure assist with problem. So to wrap up, because it's a really quick 20 minutes, some suggestions. Provide opportunities for face-to-face students to access and utilise online learning. That's blending that, creating that blended learning experience is one of the best ways to create success for all students. Connect with students and engage early with them, and engage often. So know who your students are and make sure you have a presence. Create opportunities for instructor to student interaction and communication, as well as, student to student interaction and communication. Design content for the online experience. And one of the things that has really come through is don't design content for online and not share it with your face-to-face students. I create these videos, but all students will go and watch them and go back, and if they get stuck when they're doing their assignment, they've got a resource there that they can access. So don't try and replicate or replace the face-to-face experience. Sometimes you need to think about how students are going to actually work in that online space. They may be working on the weekends, they may be doing a catch-up after 3 weeks. And remember that the technology is just another tool. It's not the answer. It doesn't fix things for you. If you're going to use technology, you really need to know why you're doing it, and that's got to be the driving force. Don't just use it because it's cool. So I'm within my time, so I'll stop sharing. Ready for questions if there are any.
Thank you, Michelle. Any questions for Michelle? Did you get your bronze bullet, Stephen?
Yes, that's fine. Yes, it's all good. Thank you.
Multiple bullets is
Sorry to distract you, Michelle, with that. I didn't mean to distract
you. That's all. I just like, whoa, totally off my
Yep, sorry.
And it took me a while to process what you're actually saying. So the silver bullet, bronze bullet, what's it?
Got to get a question in early, that's all. So
Yeah, no, that's good. No. And it's multiple things. It's not one thing fixes it. And what fixes it for me might not fix it for you.
No, that's right. Yeah.
Because my students are different to your students.
Right, thank you, Michelle. If there's no other questions, we'll move on to